Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. First, it's a pleasure to be here today in Nassau and with the Bethpage High School. Let's thank them for their hospitality and their courtesy. Pleasure to be with so many dignitaries, starting with a superb county executive who I believe is going to be even better in his second term, Ed Mangano. And I, more than most, know that public service is a family affair. It really is. When you have a parent, spouse who's in public service, it really does absorb the entire family. And it calls for sacrifices and support from the entire family. And Ed has certainly had that. And let's give a big round of applause to Linda and to Alex and to Sal for their support. The dignitaries who are here today, to Senator Al D'Amato, pleasure to be with you, Senator D'Amato. Senator Schumer, pleasure to be with you. And the third senator, Senator Dean Skelos, pleasure to be with you. A special thank you to Senator Skelos. If you notice on the program, the senator and I have switched positions on the program. I'm trying to get back to Albany on an expedited basis. They're afraid because of the snow, the airport's going to close. We have a double header today when it comes to Mother Nature. We have a storm that is coming up the coast, which will affect downstate New York, and we have a storm from the west, which will affect upstate New York. So Mother Nature is starting the new year showing us who's really in charge. Forget the senators, forget the county executive, forget the governor. Mother Nature really runs the show. So I have to get back to Albany because we're going to have a statewide snow emergency today. And I'm the guy who gives out the shovels, basically. So I have to be in place, and I want to thank Senator Dean Skelos for his courtesy today on that adjustment. I also want to say to Senator Dean Skelos, as you heard in the introduction, the state government in Albany has been working, and it's been working better than it has in decades. We've seen what government looks like when it doesn't work. You look at Washington, D.C., and you see that gridlock. And in gridlock, everybody loses, right? Because the trains stop running, the gears stop turning. And that's government at its worst. Albany had gridlock for many, many years. You know, we had gridlock before Washington made gridlock cool. Didn't get the same publicity because it was in Albany, but for many, many years, come budget time, the government would just stop and shut down. And it has been different. 3 on-time budgets in a row, first time in 34 years, 3 on-time budgets in a row. And that very much is a litmus test of the functioning of government. And much of the credit for that functioning goes to Senator Dean Skelos. He's been a great colleague to me, a great partner to me, and I'd like to acknowledge it today. Senator Dean Skelos, let's give him another round of applause. I'm an old Queens boy originally, and Queens, if we know our history, had a lot to do with literally the founding, the formation of Nassau. About 100 years or so, back in the 1800s, New York City was in a race with Chicago to expand, and what city was going to be the largest city in the United States and was going to be the preeminent city. And New York City was expanding and trying to get the local towns to join New York City. And they approached Queens, and it became a very controversial issue in Queens. And about 1899, there was a meeting in Mineola, and a big part of Queens decided to go with Mineola and the other towns to form Nassau County. About 70% of Queens went with the formation of Nassau County. About 30% the western towns went with New York City, and that was the formation, literally, of Nassau. Smaller Queens joined New York City, and Nassau County was formed. Nassau, of course, from the Isle of Nassau, the original name of Long Island. One of the first experiments in county government was Nassau County. It then became one of the preeminent experiences in county government. 1936, the first county executive in the United States is the county executive of Nassau County. And if you look through the history, as suburbanization of America took over and county governments grew, Nassau was very much the example of effective county government. And that county executive form of government was birthed right here in Nassau. And if you look at Nassau's history, you can also see that government is very much a function of the times. And when times are good, and everything's going well, and the economy's good, and there's peace, people don't really need government that much. The private sector economy's working, and good times, they don't rely on government. The exact opposite is true in bad times. When you have a real problem, that's when you need government to work. And that's when you notice how dependent we are and how important government is. Well, if government is relevant in bad times, then government is especially and ultimately relevant now, because we have crises and challenges that are of historic proportion. And not just one. We have the crisis caused by Hurricane Sandy, which will be of historic consequences. And when they write the history of Nassau County, Hurricane Sandy is going to be a formative element in that evolution of the county. And if government doesn't work at a time of crisis, you know it. When a storm hits, when there's an emergency situation, if government fails to function, people are injured. Government fails to function, people could even die. Either that apparatus works, either the first responders work, and the police and the fire and the emergency services work, either the government coordination works, or people have no place to go. 4,000 people without a warm, dry place to live after Hurricane Sandy. Either the shelters are set up and government functioned, or many, many people are hurt. You then needed the funding to do the rebuilding. Either we were successful in lobbying Washington for $60 billion in aid and making sure Washington was responsive and they delivered the funds, or we would have had no way to reconstruct the county. And either there is vision and foresight and in the reconstruction, and Nassau County is the better for this experience, or it will have all been for naught. So how this crisis is handled is extraordinarily important. At the same time, you have another crisis, which is the economic crisis, which is a slow national economy, 6, 7, 8 years, pressing businesses, pressing households, pressing government, and the question of what do you do in response to that economic slowdown? And one philosophy was, well, government needs more money. The easy answer is, well, then government should tax more. I know that sounds easy, but it's actually wrong, because it's the worst time to tax when you're in a downturn of an economy and people are struggling and businesses are struggling, especially when you're in New York State, which is a high tax state. Businesses are more mobile than ever before. You keep taxing, they'll leave. They don't have to be here. Most of people, businesses are not cemented into the foundation. The smart thing to do is to take that time and say, how do we make government more efficient and more effective? And how do we do it without raising taxes? And if we're really good, how do we find out how to put money back in the pocket of the taxpayer, because now is when they need it? That's where Nassau County is today, dealing with Hurricane Sandy and the aftermath, dealing with the economy and taxation, and dealing with the proliferation of government that we have here in this state, local governments, 300 in Nassau, 400 in Suffolk, 1,000 in Erie County with Buffalo, 10,000 governments in the state of New York. It's why our property taxes are so high. Just a proliferation of government. How you deal with those questions, how you deal with those issues, will determine the future of Nassau County. Today we inaugurate a county executive with the pomp and circumstance that is befitting the office. But at the end of the day, we inaugurate a person. We elect people. We elect men. We elect women. And at the end of the day, it comes down to an individual and what that individual is made of, what the individual has here and what the individual has here. That's what it comes down to. A gentleman named Michael Useem wrote a book, The Leadership Moment. And the book says that leadership comes down to how you react in the moment. That for some of us will be presented a decision that has to be made in the moment, and that moment is of dramatic consequence, and you rise or fall in that moment. Ed Mangano has had 4 years of moments. And in those 4 years of moments, he has demonstrated a leadership capacity that is extraordinary. Ed Mangano. In 2010, I was running for governor of the state of New York. I am not a Republican, by the way. You could probably tell by the tie, right? I was running for governor of the state of New York. I proposed a property tax cap. Ed Mangano walked across the political aisle in the middle of a campaign to say that he supported the property tax cap and it was important. And even though it was not politically convenient, he was willing to stand up and say what he believed. That took courage. That took political courage. It wasn't easy to do what he did. Ed Mangano was there day after day, fighting the effects of the storm, holding people, wiping tears, moving the first responders, coordinating with the state, coordinating with the federal government, fighting for federal aid, organizing demonstrations, buses of people going to Washington, pushing the federal officials. That showed a strength and a tenacity and an unwillingness to give up and to fail. That was extraordinary. Ed Mangano said from day one, I don't want to just rebuild Nassau, I want to build it back better. Because I believe these extreme weather conditions will happen again, and I want to make sure we're in a better position so the damage is less next time. And all over this past year, it hasn't been about just rebuilding and replacing. Ed's point was constantly, how do we make it better? How do we make it better? How do we make it better? How do we make sure we don't go through a power crisis like we went through with LIPA, which, by the way, no longer exists, in large part thanks to Ed Mangano's effort. How do we make our homes stronger? How do we make our water sewage treatment plants better? How do we make the substations better so that we don't have to go through this again? That is Ed Mangano. And I've seen that week in, week out, day in, day out. That courage is Ed Mangano. That strength is Ed Mangano. That vision is Ed Mangano. And you take that strength and that courage and that vision and you add them up, and that is the character of Ed Mangano. And that is the leader. That is the leader that is inaugurated today. I have no doubt but that when we look back 4 years from today, we will say that Nassau County is a better county. It is a stronger county, a richer county, a safer county, because of the leadership of Ed Mangano. And that, my friends, is what public service is all about. Thank you, and God bless you.